Hello there, welcome to a video that shouldn't last 40 minutes, the post-Summer Showdown Overwatch League power rankings, and a little bit of a recap as well for the APAC region this time. Don't have much to say, I pretty much got everything that I wanted to say out the way in the last video, so if you missed it, check out the NA region power rankings. Yeah, don't really have anything to say. We got some really awesome matches from the APAC region, and I've got quite a bit to say about each team, unfortunately. It shouldn't be 40 minutes worth of things to say about each team, but I do have quite a bit to say. So, without further ado, number 7, bottom team in the APAC region for the third week running, it's the Chengdu Hunters. They're just not good. They're just not good. I have 2 words for the Chengdu Hunters, and that's my eyes. What am I looking at? They are in dire need of new players. They really are just in dire need of new Chinese talent. Because I believe all of their team is Chinese except Bacon Jack, who's from Taiwan. I think that's the case. If that's not the case, then I'm sorry. But if they want to build an entirely Chinese roster, they need new players because they aren't able to play right now. And even if it is a meta that should suit them, like, I don't know, a meta where they can maybe put their star DPS player on his best hero. Maybe a Jinmu Genji meta? I don't know. That sounds pretty perfect for them, actually. They should be able to play that. Unless they just don't play Jinmu on Genji. Oh, I don't know what this team's doing, honestly. They are in dire need of a new roster. If Chengdu really wants to improve, then they just need new players. I don't think Among is cutting it anymore. I don't think Elsa was ever cutting it. I think Jinmu, even though it's a Genji meta, if he's not going to play it, then I guess that's more of a coaching decision, really. But I think Jinmu, in a meta like this, he should shine, but until I see it, I'm not confident in him. I think Leave has been really good on the 2 heroes that he plays, and Bacon Jack has been really good on the 1 hero that he plays, but their hero pools just aren't deep enough to consider playing them any more than just that, on any more than just those heroes. And then I think their backline is probably the only thing that is salvageable from this team. I think all of their support players, Kyo, Evoltal, Molly especially, and Lengsa, they've all looked like the best players on this team. The rest of their team, honestly, they could do away with them and come in with a completely new roster next season, and I think it would make perfect sense for them. Chengdu, they're just not a good team. Number 6, though, is a team that I honestly wouldn't rate too much higher than the Hunters with the way they were playing. Hangzhou Spark, what happened? Seriously, what happened? The lack of coordination coming from this team was ridiculous. They looked worse than they have since QOQ came in and since Architect came in, and I think that's actually pretty ridiculous because in theory, again, this should be a perfect meta for this team. This should actually be a stupidly good meta for this team. They can put Architect, their new acquisition, on Genji, and even if they, for whatever reason, were like, nah, we don't think Architect's that good on Genji, they still have Ado, who, granted, it's only like live streams of him in ranked that I've really seen of it, but goddamn, his Genji is ridiculous. His Genji is actually, he's so mechanically skilled on Genji that he would have probably been a good fit for them too, even if they didn't want to play Architect. And so I don't think they have any excuses. This meta should have been perfect for them. They can run Godsby, who's still looking as good as ever on hitscan. They can run him on his perfect heroes, the Widowmaker and the Ashe. They can run Architect on the Genji. If they don't want to run Architect, they can run Ado on the Genji. They have so many options. QOQ's looked decent as well. QOQ's actually looked really good for them until this point. What's going on? Seriously, what actually happened? They looked so poor. Even Architect on the Genji, which he's been known to be really good at for 2 seasons of Overwatch League now. He's looked like one of the best Genjis in the world. And then he comes out and he plays like that. I mean, come on. It's just so disappointing. This team could and should be so much better than they were. And I don't really know what to say that hasn't already been said about them this weekend. They just looked so poor. They should have been so much better this meta, but they just weren't. Honestly, I have nothing but disappointment for Hangzhou Spark right now. They should have been so much better. 5th place is a team that I think did their best. Honestly, they did the best that they could with their roster in a Genji meta. It's London Spitfire. Although it wasn't bad at the Genji, but they get their first match against Seoul in their literal perfect meta. This could not be a more perfect meta for Seoul, and their first match was against Seoul Dynasty. Yeah, honestly, it's just unfortunate for London Spitfire that they have to be put up against teams like New York and like Seoul and etc. I would say they probably would have comfortably beaten Hangzhou with how they were playing, and they definitely would have beaten Chengdu with them doing whatever they were doing. But unfortunately, I can't put them any higher on this list. I do actually think London have a good team, though, which honestly is not the first time this season. In the last 2 weeks or so, they've actually looked a lot better. But honestly, looking at their roster on paper, you wouldn't think that would be an especially good team. But they actually are very good. I am kind of impressed with London and how they've managed to come together and make a pretty decent team. It's just unfortunate that they happen to be in the same region as a lot of top tier teams right now, and so they have to be in 5th place. They didn't seem to have a great understanding of the meta, at least compared to Seoul, and so they fell over a little bit because of that. They seem to just sort of force plays a little bit. They seem to just sort of forehead run in with although like give him an armor pack and then just go in full charge forehead, try and force Seoul to do something. But then Seoul are good enough to just read that and then think, oh, well, we'll just do this and counter that, and Prophet will then go on your back line and completely assassinate them and then take you all out from there. And so what they were doing just didn't work. Whereas I think if they had a better understanding of the meta and they not only went in at better times, but then also gave Although a little bit more resources and allowed him to carry a little bit more on his role, they probably could have done quite a bit better. But again, they started against Seoul, so who knows? Yeah, I think this team is actually not bad at all. I think if it was an overall power rankings with both the NA region and APAC region, they'd be pretty high up on the list. Definitely top 10. But because they're in the APAC region, top 5 is where I'm going to limit them. I wouldn't put them any higher than that. 4th place is New York Excelsior, and I think a lot of people might be surprised that I'm putting them in 4th place. A lot of people might have expected me to put them in 3rd. But I have, again, nothing but disappointment for New York Excelsior. They seriously have no excuses. This should, again, they have a very similar thing that the Hangzhou Spark had. They were just a much better team. They really have no excuses. I don't know who to put it down to as well as the worst thing for New York. And it's always the worst thing for New York because I have no idea who to put it down to. It could be their coaching staff, but I don't know because is it just me, or I've never heard anything ever about the New York coaching staff. It could be the players themselves, but they have such a talented roster on paper. I mean, they've got a Genji player in a Genji meta. They're in a Genji meta right now, and they have Haxel, and they're not a successful team. That is what's so mind-boggling about this team. They have probably the best Genji in the world, except maybe Sparkle, and probably Eileen as well. Eileen was really good, and EQO. They have a player who's up there at least, Haxel. He's classically been one of the world's greatest Genji players. They have Nene, who I think is an incredibly talented hitscan player. They have Manu, who isn't the greatest Orisa player in the world, especially in terms of his bongo usage. Is still an incredibly talented main tank. Where does this team fall apart? Because even Jonak, who is usually the guy that I would point to as the reason why New York Excelsior sometimes fall apart, because Jonak tends to play a really resource-heavy style of flex support, which in Season 1, yeah, it worked perfectly, but this season, not so much. This season and last season, it doesn't work as well for New York as a whole, and it definitely doesn't work as well for Jonak. So I would usually, when it comes to New York, sort of put it down to Jonak being the reason why, Jonak playing a little bit too aggressively being the reason why they're not as successful as they could be in some metas. But Jonak has actually been playing extremely reserved recently. On the Baptiste, he's playing very reserved, very much just giving resources to his team. So I really don't think it's a player thing. New York as well, they were running, for whatever reason, they just kept trying to run this Tracer Genji comp versus what Guangzhou were running, and it wasn't working. And at one point, they ran on... There's such a tragic Hanamura attack. They tried to run Mei on Hanamura attack in a Genji meta where Genji is an insanely powerful hero. Probably the most powerful hero in the game right now is Genji. And you think, Hanamura attack? Let's put Haxel on Mei. Oh, what is going on with this team? I feel like there must be something with the coaching staff, because they consistently now don't know what roster to field, don't know what DPS to field, come up with awful reads on the meta consistently throughout hero pools, and even now they aren't doing great. And I if I had to have someone be the scapegoat, if I had to put all the blame for everything that's wrong with New York Excelsior onto one person, which is obviously not the case, but I'm going to do it anyway, I would probably say it's the coaching staff, just because it would be a good explanation as to why this team tends to crumble a little bit. As for the future for New York Excelsior, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they looked into getting an entirely new roster, because even though all of the players on this team are, when you read their names, Nene, Haxel, Mano, Hopper even though Hopper has not looked great this season in my opinion, but he's still a really good off-tank player. He's not a great off-tank player. He's definitely the weakest link on New York Excelsior right now, I would argue. But he's still a really good player. And then you see Animo, and then you see, you could look at their bench. They have Libero, they have Who Are You, who would, any teams who are struggling in the Genji meta who don't have a great Genji, they must be looking towards Who Are You, thinking, I wish we had a player like that sitting on our bench. I just think, even though all of these players, when you read their names off, they are incredibly talented players, for whatever reason, they don't work too well together. They seem to play way too passive in metas where they need to go aggressive, and then in metas where they need to play a little bit more passive, it's kind of a 50-50 with they'll try and play aggressive thinking they need to go aggressive, or they'll play the passive style that they're normally really good at really well and end up winning. Honestly, I'm not impressed with New York. I don't really any longer consider them a top team, even though on paper they should be. Just incredibly disappointing team. I really wish New York would be the team that they should be, but just can't be for whatever reason. Anyway, I've gone on long enough about New York Excelsior. So third place, Seoul Dynasty. They actually seemed really decent at this meta. They seem to have a really decent understanding. In fact, I'd be willing to listen to an argument if someone would put it forwards that they had a little bit of a better read on the meta than Shanghai Dragons did, just because they seemed very capable of sort of letting Profit be the carry Genji and sort of pushing him forwards and giving him resources and letting him pop the fuck off, because Profit really did pop off. I think if you're considering the top Genjis in the league right now, Profit must be in that conversation, because even though they didn't get to the finals and whatever, they didn't look amazing as a team, even though they lost to Shanghai Dragons, who, again, I would think that you could make a good argument that they had a better read on the meta than Shanghai Dragons did. Even though they lost to them, Profit was nuts on Genji. He was crazy. Probably not as good as Eileen was for Guangzhou Charge, but he was still crazy good on the Genji. I think Profit overall was in his element a little bit. I think Genji is Profit's best hero, and so when he finally gets to play it after like a season and a half of not being able to, it must have been satisfying for him, and you could tell he was definitely in his element, definitely a lot more than he has been in the last season and a half of watching Profit play Overwatch. So there's that. As well, I think there's some weird things to talk about in terms of their roster and who they're fielding, because they started out running Slime instead of Toby, which is weird for them because they do normally run Toby. And if you ask me, I think Toby's actually been really consistently a good performer for this team. Toby has actually been really good. I think he doesn't get much, he doesn't get talked about that much. And obviously, when you think of Seoul Dynasty, you don't think of Toby, really. You think of Profit, you think of Gesture, you think of the big name players on that team, you think of Fitz even, before you'd think of someone like Toby. But honestly, if you go back and watch previous matches from this season, Toby's been one of the most consistent good performers on this team. So initially when I saw Slime coming in, I thought it was a little weird because I thought Toby was actually doing really good. And Slime to me has always been more of a Lucio player than he's ever been a Brig player. But he actually looked decent. Slime looked really decent on the Brig. He seemed to know that he needs to give his resources to Prophet so Prophet can pop off. And as well as that, the rest of the team as a whole seemed to just click with the idea that they're all there to support Prophet. They're all there to support the Genji and allow the Genji to get insane amounts of damage done and get a blade every fight and just pop off with that. They seemed overall to have a really good understanding. But they had a better understanding, at least I think, weirdly, when they subbed in Michelle. Which is super strange. And I just wanted to give a moment to talk about this, because why are they playing with Marvel as their off-tank? Does anyone know? Can anyone tell me, if you stumble across this video, can anyone tell me in the comment section what Soul's reason is for running Marvel as their off-tank? Because I don't get it. I don't get it. At first I thought it was because Michelle isn't comfortable on Sigma, which would make sense because Marvel is actually pretty good on Sigma. And so that's why they've been running Marvel as their off-tank and Gesture as their main tank this entire season. That makes sense to me. But then Michelle came in, and honestly, if I think it was Sideshow or Bren or someone that said this on the Plat Chat podcast, if you took away the nameplates, I would have seen absolutely no difference between Michelle and Marvel. They looked incredibly similar in terms of skill on Sigma. So why are they running Marvel as their off-tank? Because he's definitely not better than Michelle is at any of the other off-tank heroes. There's no way that can be true. So why? I wonder what it is. But anyway, I wanted to say they did look a little bit better when they subbed in Toby and when they subbed in Toby for Slime and when they subbed in Michelle for Marvel. They actually looked a little bit better than they did with Marvel and Slime in the lineup. So going forwards, honestly, I would really love to see them playing Michelle full time as their off-tank player, because I truly don't see a reason why they would run Marvel now. And also, the scoreline actually really reflects it. I'd love to bring it up right now and show you. But the first two maps where they played Marvel and where they played Slime were complete stomps. Shanghai stomped them. But then as soon as they made those substitutions, the maps actually became a lot closer. Even Gibraltar, which is generally a map that is Shanghai's stomping ground, Shanghai almost always first hold on Gibraltar. It was actually pretty close between them. So yeah, I'd love to see Seoul playing more often with Michelle in the lineup, and I'd love them to keep Toby in the lineup a little bit more. Unless a Lucio meta comes around, then I think Slime will be incredibly useful. But for now, Toby and Toby and Michelle in the lineup, I think is probably the best setup going for Seoul Dynasty right now. And overall, I think they played this meta really well. I think they had a good understanding. I think Gesture as a player who I've not been very impressed with so far this season came into his own on the Orisa a little bit. Yeah, overall, everyone on the team did great. Yeah, I don't really have any complaints about Seoul. I think they just got a little bit outclassed by the team that I've put in second place, which is Shanghai Dragons. And yes, even though I don't think Shanghai had the best read on the meta, it doesn't matter when you're incredibly skilled as their players are, does it? So, yeah, it doesn't matter when DM can just completely make fits for the Seoul Dynasty a non-factor. So, who cares, right? Shanghai, I think they still fall back on dive a little bit too much for my liking. I sort of mentioned that previously as a possible weakness for Shanghai, that they fall back on dive a little bit too much, and they sort of use it as a crutch when they don't have a particularly good read on a meta that is better than dive. They tend to just fall back on it. It was the case in the May Melee finals, and I think it's what they attempted to do in the Summer Showdown finals as well, but it just didn't quite work out for them this time. And I sort of hit the nail on the head when I said it just now, that they didn't have the greatest of reads on this meta. A lot of people have put their loss to Guangzhou down to DM not doing particularly well, but I thought DM, especially in the match against Seoul, but even in the match against Guangzhou, DM actually looked incredibly good. DM actually looked really, really good. There were one or two moments where he went a little too aggressive and got himself caught out, for sure. I'll give you that one. But you can't change my mind on this. DM was not the reason they were losing these games. Yes, I completely agree that Shanghai do tend to look better when Lip is in the roster, but I don't think that it's because Lip is like more of a communicator or anything like that, which is what a lot of people, including the casters of the match, theorized. Achilles and Wolf were theorizing. I think it's more so the fact that when they play with Lip, they play more dive-centric team comps. And so, because they're just so much more well-coordinated on dive than they are on any other team comp, they naturally do better because of that. Whereas with DM in the roster, they have a player who can more comfortably play a Widowmaker, and goddamn, DM is still one of the best Widowmakers. I know it's been a full season, pretty much since we've been able to see DM at full power on Widowmaker, but Jesus Christ, he was, again, Fitz is not a Widowmaker to scoff at. Fitz is an incredibly good Widowmaker, and DM just made him a complete non-factor. Fitz basically didn't exist. Fitz basically didn't exist in the match against, Shanghai's match against Seoul, because DM was shutting him down every single fight. I think Fitz maybe got 1 or 2 kills onto DM. The rest were completely all DM's kills, which is ridiculous in a Overwatch League match that one Widow would shut down another Widow that strongly. And even in the final match, I would definitely say Happy is the best Widow is the best Widow in the APAC region right now, 100%. But DM was giving him a rough time. He was still making him fight for it. So yeah, anyone that is saying that DM was the reason they were losing and that they should have just played Lip, I think is completely wrong. Because the real issue of this team for me was how they were trying to play this meta. And I think they were just sort of not entirely comfortable with sort of allowing Fleta to solo carry on the Genji, because they've never really had to have a solo carry performer before. Shanghai tend to win matches because in every meta previously this season, it's been more about how well and how coordinated you can be as a team, rather than how much of a carry potential one particular player on your team has. There's definitely been moments where players on Shanghai have carried. I mean, it's why I think Fearless is the best Winston in the world, right? He is an absolute carry performer on the Winston. But I don't think they were really comfortable with fully committing to a style of play where they need to just put all of their resources on one player and let that player pop off using those resources, which held them back a little bit, because it was definitely noticeable that Fleta was playing an extremely passive style of Genji, where what he needs to be doing is what Prophet and Eileen were doing a lot better than he was, where they just go in, they use their team's resources, they go in and they shut down everything that they can on the enemy team, and they pop off as much as possible. It didn't seem like Fleta really knew how much he could get away with playing aggressive as Genji right now, and so because of that, he sort of naturally opted to play a little bit more defensively, a little bit more passively, and against Seoul, it worked okay because Seoul obviously aren't as good of a team as Guangzhou are. But against Guangzhou, obviously, we've seen the scoreline. We all saw the final match. It didn't work out, and they got shut down because of it. And one thing that I also wanted to point out is that Fearless really didn't look comfortable on Orisa, and I don't think it's because he's just an inherently bad Orisa player. I don't think that's the case at all. What I think is probably more likely is that they, because they're so used to putting their resources into Fearless when he's on Winston and when he's on Reinhardt to sort of push him forwards, and because they've had so much success with putting their resources into Fearless when they do that, I think they might have assumed that they could just do the same thing this meta with him on Orisa, and it didn't work out quite as well, because obviously in this meta you want your resources on the Genji, not on your Orisa. And so when you put all the resources onto Orisa, and when a team like Guangzhou notices that that's what you're doing, they're going to punish it really hard with their Genji, and that's exactly what happened. And so Shanghai just kind of fell over against Guangzhou because of that. But you'll notice in every match where they did, in every map, I think Gibraltar and Busan, where they were able to just force their resources onto Fearless, they won them, and they won them pretty decisively. So yeah, as far as other things for Shanghai goes, I think, again, DM performed incredibly well. He doesn't deserve the criticism that he's getting right now. I think that Lee Jae-gon actually had an incredible performance in every match that he played, including the one against Guangzhou. Lee Jae-gon had an incredible performance on Brig. The dude looked nuts. I'd consider him probably the best Brigitte player in the world right now. Maybe except for Moth, but Moth didn't even play Brig this weekend, so I'd have to give it Lee Jae-gon right now. And Void as well. I've seen a lot of people saying that Krong was just the better off-tank in the off-tank matchup. I completely disagree. I think Krong is incredibly good, but Void is on another level right now. If I had to make a comparison, I'd say it's a bit like the difference between Gargoyle and Choi Hyobin in the NA region right now, where Gargoyle is a really, really incredibly good Sigma player. Choi Hyobin's just that little bit better, and I think it's sort of a similar thing with Void and Krong right now, where Krong would be the Gargoyle in this situation, and Void would be the Choi Hyobin in this situation. Because, yes, it did look like Krong maybe had the better Sigma out of the two of them in that match, just because Guangzhou were winning so as handily as they were winning. I still think Void looked incredible in that match. Void was doing everything he could. Void and Lee Jae-gon looked incredibly good. DM looked incredibly good. I think it's more so that Fleta didn't have the greatest understanding of the meta. Izayaki wasn't playing up to his normal standard, I think. I don't know what reason could be for that, if I'm being completely honest with you. But I definitely don't think he was playing up to his normal standard. And I think Fearless was just not having a great time on the Orisa. If I had to put the reasons why Shanghai lost into bullet points, those would be my bullet points. Anyway, finally, the number one team in the APAC region right now, I don't know if they'll be able to hold that title for long, but for now, definitely the number one team in the APAC region, Guangzhou Charge. This weekend they looked incredible. I think you could genuinely make the argument that they're the best team in the world at the moment. Personally, I wouldn't. I think the top three teams in NA right now would probably be able to beat Guangzhou. But right now, Guangzhou Charge, they're definitely the best team in the APAC region because, Jesus Christ, every single player on this team looked incredible this meta. They had such a good understanding of this meta. They looked so clean overall. If I want to break it down into each player and in each role, just because I feel the need to give them all shout-outs because they all played so well. Breaking down the tank line, Rio. This is the best I've ever seen Rio play. Rio, if you know me, I think Rio is a little bit more of a middling main tank compared to other main tanks in the league. Rio had such an amazing understanding of what he needed to do on Orisa. And Rio generally plays a little bit more of a passive style, a little bit more of a, hey team, here's all the resources in the world, you guys go pop off, I'll just do everything to support you doing that. That style of play worked so perfectly this meta that I have to give Rio the best main tank of the week award if that exists, because he just looked so comfortable on Orisa. It's the best I've ever seen Rio. I still think he's a little bit weak on Reinhardt. When we saw him play Reinhardt versus Fearless and versus Shanghai Dragons on Busan, he definitely without a doubt looked still pretty weak on Reinhardt. But his Orisa was so good this weekend, I have to give him the sort of best main tank of the week award, honestly. And then Krong, their off tank. Oh, Krong just is so good. Krong is so good. He's probably a top 5 off tank right now, maybe even top 4 off tank right now. He is really just so good, especially on Sigma. The dude's Sigma is incredible. I still don't think he was quite as good as Void was, but he was incredibly close to being as good as Void. This video's gone on for way too long. I need to speed up a little bit. Happy, I think, is the best hit scan player in APAC right now. I would say the best hit scan player in the world, but I think he's on a pretty equal level with Xe. And then, of course, Arns still exists, and Arns is just untouchable. The guy looks like an actual aimbot. He's such a freak. Eileen, best Genji in the world? Potentially he's up there. I don't know if he's quite as good as EQO and as good as Sparkle especially, but he's definitely up there. He's at least top 3. Eileen looked insane on the Genji, which is something that I never expected, by the way. I'd never for a second going into this week thought Eileen is probably going to be a top Genji player, above Prophet, above Haxel, above all of these extremely well-known, incredible Genji players in years past. Eileen would be up there with them. Never could have guessed that, but he came out and he proved me wrong. And then the supports as well. Shu looked, again, Shu I think has been probably a top 5 flex support for the last 2 seasons now. And this weekend, he looked better than I've ever seen him before on Baptiste. The amount of clutch plays that he got. That clutch on Busan was incredible. The window and then just getting a 3K with it. Like, come on. That's some shit that you'd expect from Violet. You would never expect that from Shu. Shu was ridiculous. Shu was ridiculous this weekend. And Chara as well. Another player you'd never expect to look insanely good. Looked amazing on Briggs. Some of the whip shots he was hitting onto Fleta whenever he was blading. And even whip shotting Fearless off the map multiple times on Ilios. Like, that's actually kind of ridiculous. And just overall, he looked like an incredible Brig player. He just always seemed to be doing the right things at the right times and would rarely ever get caught out, which is so impressive, especially against a team like Shanghai, who just tend to instantly see mistakes when players make them. I don't know, man. I just think everyone on this team looked so good. I have to give a shout out to the coaching staff as well, because they must have just instantly been like, yep, this is how we play this meta. Put all your resources into Eileen. To be able to know that Eileen is also that good at Genji as well and field him immediately with no question about it. I'm so impressed with this team overall. But with all that being said, as much as I love Guangzhou right now, as much as I think you could make an argument that they're the best team in the world at this meta, that's just the thing. It's at this meta. Is this meta look? I think it might be, potentially. I can see next week Shanghai sort of coming in with a better understanding of the meta, or maybe even the meta changes slightly with all the Brig nerfs coming in. I can see that in coming weeks when the Overwatch League returns, that they might not be able to hold that top spot. I can see them losing to a sort of more powerful Shanghai who have learned the meta a little bit better and are maybe a little bit better because Brig is less powerful. I can see that happening. The big question for them is, can they make it last? Can they stay at number 1 in this number 1 APAC position for long? I think their chances of that are slim, but maybe they can prove me wrong. They looked incredibly good this weekend, and I would feel disingenuous saying that they aren't the best team, at least in the APAC region right now, after how good they looked this weekend. But yeah, that's about it. Again, as for extra things that I want to mention, I think I said it all in the last video, but look out in coming weeks for live stream content, because I'd really love to just stream some VOD reviews at some point. I don't know when I'll get around to it, but I would love to do it at some point. It's 3:20 in the morning. I really need to just stop recording this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for all the support recently. If you have your own power rankings that you want to drop in the comment section, I'd love to read over them. If you have any questions or anything you want to say about my rankings, feel free. I love to read the comments. And yeah, thank you so much for all your support, guys. It's actually like incredible. This channel's grown so much. I've been posting for 2, maybe 3 weeks, and this channel's grown an insane amount in that time. We're almost at 100 subscribers, which is something that I thought it would take months to get to. And so the fact it's been under a month and we're already this far, it's actually kind of incredible to me. One thing that I wanted to ask, if you've made it all the way into this video, maybe answer this question in the comments section. Would you like to see a video of me explaining what my goals with the channel are and who I am a little bit further, so you can understand my personality a little bit more? Just yes or no if you'd like to see that video, go for it. Yeah, I've got a lot of plans for the future. I know it's been a couple weeks, it's been a week and a bit between uploads, but hopefully you won't have to wait as long between uploads. With the week off, I want to do a little bit more content in terms of streaming and in terms of just putting out topic videos and that kind of thing. I want to be able to do that in the next couple of weeks, and so yes, just look out for stuff. I've got a lot more to come. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry it took so long to come out with this video, but yeah, anyway, I need to stop rambling on. It's 34 minutes. Thank you for watching. See you later.